Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining our discussion of Aftermask Innovative Business Development in the New Normal. My name is John Finnegan. I'm a business consultant with the SBDC, working out of Central Florida in conjunction with UCF. We work with small business clients in the general Central Florida area. I bring with me 30 plus years. I stopped tracking the time after 30 years. I think that's probably plenty, but 30 years working in business, typically on the business development side, sales management, and revenue growth. I worked with Fortune 200 national scope, large corporations. I worked with mid-size, $500 to $700 million businesses. And I've founded two small businesses, two very successful small businesses in Central Florida, and worked with others as well. So my business experience is fairly broad. And again, like I mentioned, it's typically on the business development side. I've got an MBA from the University of Wisconsin. Go Badgers. So Aftermask, we actually started this conversation with our clients, our business clients in Central Florida last year at the beginning of the pandemic. And as you can imagine, Central Florida, many businesses are associated with hospitality, travel, attractions, business travel, that kind of thing. And last year, the discussion in terms of innovative business growth was a requirement. It was more about survival than it was about simply expanding your business. It was required last year. This year, obviously, we're in the beginning of what looks to be a robust economic recovery. So the business environment looks to be very positive moving forward. So now it's not about survival anymore. Now it's about a conversation with business owners about let's leverage the recovery, right? Let's maximize our opportunities. And from a small business perspective, a small business owner's perspective, what they have now is a footprint. Their business is a finite footprint. It's fairly well defined. And if you want to grow, you do one of a couple of things. Either you do the same thing you've been doing in the past, kind of a work harder approach to it, or you look at other ways to do it. So you try to expand that footprint. And that's what the discussion is going to be today on how do you expand that footprint. And we're going to talk about a couple of things. The first kind of topic we're going to talk about are different ideas for growth. We're going to talk about just a few here, but it gives you kind of a mindset as to how do you look broader in your business. We're going to talk a little bit about the process, and then a couple of times throughout the presentation, I'm going to mention one key idea here, and that's the mindset or the attitude or the approach of the business owners for small businesses or the executive for small businesses. Absolutely critical. One other thing I'm going to touch on is big corporations are following this approach and following it very successfully and very high profile. That I'm going to use some examples that we've all seen. Small businesses should take the same approach. Okay, the state of Florida. Obviously, the state of Florida is a robust economy, fast growth. And here's kind of the perspective from my view. I was born and raised in Wisconsin. The first half of my career was with businesses based out of Wisconsin. Wisconsin from 2010 to 2020 grew by 2.4%. In 10 years, the population grew by 2.4%. Florida grew in that same 10 years, 15.4%. So this is really a high growth, high opportunity environment for businesses. And the reason I bring that up is to encourage business owners to be open-minded in terms of new opportunities. Okay. All right, so small business owners, the key to the advice here, and really it is the key, and I'm going to say it a couple of times, is if you want different results, you're going to have to think differently. And if you're the leader of the business, if you're the owner and the chief executive, and you want growth and you want different results, you have to lead differently. Now, some of the things we're going to talk about, most of them, there's kind of discussions that you have that are right down the middle. As you start to get a little bit more innovative, you start moving away to the sides. And then there are some ideas, we're going to touch on just a couple here today, that are kind of counterintuitive. We're going to talk a little bit about reaching out to a competitor and potentially working with a competitor. Kind of not the first thing that comes to your mind when you're talking about growing your business. So this is always the starting point. Regardless of the economy, regardless of the industry, the starting point is always to let's understand the owner's expectation. And you know, the consultants that I work with on our team, we've seen the whole spectrum. We've seen owners that are very content with incremental growth. They've grown by 8% a year, year over year, over the last few years. They're very content with that kind of growth. This is typically not addressed to them. We also work with owners that have had either plateaued, their growth is plateaued, or it's been, you know, low, 5%, 8% or something like that. And they do want to shake things up. They do want to see something other than incremental growth. And that's the starting point, because that defines what has to happen in the business plan. And the more the bigger the growth, the bigger the change from past performance, the more aggressive the plan has to be. And then at the end of the day, the business owner and the executive team, you really have to reconcile what your goals are in terms of business growth and what your comfort level is with risk, because we are going to talk about different paths to growing the business. And I wouldn't tell you at all that there's no risk. There's always risk. But that's part of the process. The process that we're going to talk about towards the end is analyzing, you know, what do you have to do? What steps do you have to take? What's the risk? What's the cost? And are you willing to handle that? We're going to start simple. So expanding the territory, and I'm going to use an example here, Greater Orlando. I put the population in there, 1.9 million, just as a perspective. Incremental expansion might be add Daytona Beach, Lakeland, and Melbourne, population 265,000, just for a perspective. So here's, you'll notice that I said simple, but I didn't say easy. I'm not saying that any of this is easy, but this is, when it comes to business growth, expanding your territory, especially just incrementally, that it's probably the most simple expansion you can get. And here's why. You're maintaining the same product line, you're maintaining the same services, typically can do that out of the same facility with the same staff, with the same management team. You're just moving it out geographically. You may have to add a person or something to help grow the business, but really it's a pretty simple and pretty low risk approach to growing the business. Then you might be able to add a key market. And again, just for this discussion, if your business is Orlando, kind of an adjacent key market might be Tampa, and you look at the population of Greater Tampa, 3.1 million. So if you're considering that as an Orlando business, as an opportunity to grow, it's really a pretty substantial opportunity. Now, when you talk about incremental expansion, you can do that without too much change. Adding a key market like Tampa, you might have to invest. You might have to invest in a satellite facility there. You might have to invest in maybe a, kind of a satellite manager or something like that, and maybe more people. But still, from an approach of growing your business, it's still a relatively simple approach. A little bit more complicated, expand your product line. Add adjacent or complementary products. And I'm going to use the example here. If you're a door supplier in the construction industry, and you're supplying general contractors, you're supplying home builders, but you want to expand your business, so you add a window line. So now you have doors and windows, and you are supplying your same general contractors, the same home builders, so you have the same customer base. There's an opportunity to add service and install. So the same example we were talking about, You're supplying doors. Okay, well, you're giving the doors over to the general contractor. They install them. They worry about the service. Well, maybe you expand your business just a little bit by adding the installation. So now you're just not delivering the doors. You're doing the installation as well. You're providing service after the fact. So, this is more complicated because now you have to begin relationships with other suppliers. You might have to gain some expertise. You might have to hire somebody, instead of just geographical expansion. Now it's a little bit more complicated, a little bit more involved, but here's the value. In the general sense, you're probably selling to the same customer base. So maybe you keep the same sales team, that kind of thing, but you're expanding their ability to sell to our current clients, to their current clients. So if there's value to you, you're adding to the average sale to your customer. But here's really the value is, think about it from your customer's perspective. If you're selling doors and windows to a general contractor or home builder, if you're selling just doors and somebody else is selling the windows, now the general contractor has to work with two vendors. If you're packaging the two, now the general contractor just has to work with one vendor. It's simpler for them, and it's better for you. So it's really a win-win. It's really a great opportunity to expand your business. Product line. Okay, so this is, at the beginning I mentioned big corporations are following some of these approaches. Big corporations are all about product line expansion. And you'll see here, if you remember the 90s, there was this quaint little bookseller called Amazon Books. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Amazon Books. Well, apparently they made a decision to expand their product line. And they've done so fairly successfully over the years. And now Amazon is the beast that it is. And obviously, that's the extreme example. I get that. That's the extreme example. But at some point, Jeff Bezos and his team made the conscious decision that they wanted to expand, and they took on the risk and they expanded their business and they ended up where they are now. At some point, the approach that small businesses have to take if they want to expand their business involves some of the same decisions. Seek to build cooperative partnerships. This is going to be another win-win circumstance, and it's really not terribly complicated, but it's working with your partners. So the first opportunity is working with your suppliers, and if you think about it this way, the more products you sell that you're buying from your suppliers, the more you're selling, it's better for you, it's better for them. So any way you can work together to provide a more competitive, put yourself in a more competitive situation in your marketplace, it's good for you and it's good for the suppliers. And I'm looking at cooperative advertising potentially, maybe improved pricing structures. So the more you buy, maybe there's some volume advantages in terms of pricing and that kind of thing. The same thing can be said for you and your relationship with your key clients. If you can put your key clients in a position where they're more successful, they're more competitive in their marketplace, they're going to sell more, it's better for them and it's better for you. And you can have the same types of discussions with your key clients that you do with your key suppliers. And this, it sounds pretty instinctive when you hear it. Not everybody thinks that way. So my suggestion is reach out. You start the conversation. If you have suppliers that you've been working with and they haven't had these ideas, you start the conversation. Don't wait for them. Same with key clients. That's part of the relationship with the client is you talk to them and you say, how are we doing? Is there any way we can help you grow? Okay, build cooperate. So again, big picture, big corporations. As I was preparing this presentation, I saw this advertisement on TV, and it struck me. It was Chanel No. 5 available at, and at the end of this beautiful commercial, high fashion, very attractive. At the end, it said available at Macy's, the fragrance destination. My first thought was, I didn't know Macy's was the fragrance destination. That was a surprise to me. But at any rate, it's about Macy's and Chanel No. 5 or whoever the parent company is working together and getting an advertisement on TV and sharing the cost, and they get shared benefit. So the big corporations can do that. Think about it at your level. Is there somebody that you can partner with at your level, either with your supplier or your clients, to do the same thing? Strategic partnerships. This is all about finding somebody that's in your space, not competitive, but maybe in your space that you might be able to share some synergies with. And I think about the example I used earlier about the supplier of doors to general contractors and home builders. Well, maybe there's a supplier of something else that's not competitive to you. They're selling to the same people that you're selling to. And maybe they have relationships that you don't have. Maybe there's a way you can get together and build a collective strategic partnership, and you bring them into your customers. They bring you into their customers. It works for you, it works for them. And the beautiful thing about it is, if you do it that way, typically strategic partnerships, first of all, they're relatively low risk and they're relatively low cost. There's not typically a cost associated with that kind of strategic partnership. Okay, counterintuitive, your competition, what's up with them? I am a big fan of this thought. It's as counterintuitive as you can get. And here's how this starts. So you should always know what's going on with your competition. I don't care what industry you are in or what the market is, if it's a strong market, it's a weak market. You should always know kind of what's going on with your competitors. And at some point, if you have strong competitors in your market, and they're good at certain things and maybe not so good at certain things, and you're good at other certain things and not so good at other certain things. And you make the argument, if you could combine the two, whether it's a single entity or it's some kind of shared partnership or strategic partnership, you'd be a monster in your marketplace. If you took their strengths and your strengths and put them together, you could be very strong. Okay, well, that's counterintuitive. Most business owners are reluctant to have that conversation, but maybe you reach out and say, hey, I'm John Finnegan, I'm with ABC Company. I'm one of your competitors, but maybe we should have a conversation. And that's not just me saying this. This is a recent article, a recent issue of Harvard Business Review, When to Work with Rivals. That's exactly what that article was about, is the counterintuitive aspect of that approach. Maximize your current team. We used to call that all hands on deck. And here's kind of the smaller version of that, is say you have somebody, it's about expanding your sales activities. And maybe you can get somebody to help incrementally. And maybe you have a customer service person that's very personable, that your customers like, that very likable, very trustworthy, knows your business, that kind of thing. Not afraid to pick up the call. Maybe you take that person for, just a portion, 5 hours a week or something like that, a defined portion. You give that person some activities to do. They reach out, they make the calls, and maybe they can help kind of grow, especially the front end of the business cycle. Okay, how to proceed? We're coming kind of to the end here. The start is to identify the ideas. If you, as a business owner, made the commitment that you want to grow the business, that's your commitment. Okay, well, how? Okay, well, start thinking about ideas. And here's what I'm going to highly recommend is the more minds, the more sets of eyes, the more people that are involved in the process, the more ideas you're going to get, and probably the better quality ideas. And I can assure you that's what happens. And I put the whiteboard there. I'm a huge whiteboard fan because it allows you to visualize the ideas. So you start putting ideas up there, you start saying, what about this? And, everybody from your customer service team to your, outside field service team, or your managers, or, all of your people could be involved with that that kind of discussion. And again, if you assume that, your installers are out there and they may not have these ideas, don't make that assumption. Second part, once you've got the ideas, evaluate the ideas, do the math on it, extend it out. What is it going to take in terms of resources? How do you leverage the idea? And then at some point, you might have 10 or 12 interesting ideas. At some point, you have to prioritize. As a small business, you can't do 10 things at once. You got to pick the couple that make the most sense to you. And then you move forward and implement. The approach works. I can assure you we have quite a number of small businesses that have taken that kind of outside the match thinking and have been very successful. So I believe we have a couple minutes for questions. Are there any questions here? Come on. I know I talk fast. I completely get that. Let's see here. But something partnerships are buying groups good for small businesses. Oh, considering partnerships are buying groups. Yeah, I would say have that conversation. So you reach out, and the starting point to that is, what do you want it to look like? What do you want that relationship to look like? So that's the starting point for any discussion when you think there might be a strategic partnership available. How can you form partnerships without them taking your clients? That's a great question, and that's a risk determination. At some point, you have to have an instinctive feel that the people you're talking to, they get the fact that if you work together cooperatively, it's better for both parties, and you got to have that level of trust at some point. Would you say there are scenarios where it makes sense to partner with a direct competitor? Yeah, that's kind of what I was leading to earlier. You really got to be careful about it, but think about it. If they're a mirror image of you and there's no advantage to the partnership, that's probably not the best idea. If they do certain things very well and you do certain things very well, and maybe have different strengths, and some kind of combined relationship makes you both stronger, that's the opportunity. Let's see here. Small business in some cases are like a family. How do you recommend, the new normal, to work more professional and drive their mentality, to see their business like a great opportunity? I do. So the question is, as a business owner, it's about your mentality. It's about your approach to growing a business and that kind of thing. And that's what we said in the beginning is, if you're, as a business owner, if your default reaction is no, it's not going to work. We tried it before, it didn't work. If that's your default approach, you're going to have a hard time growing your business from the current footprint because everything looks like a lot of risk. And that's not normally a good approach to take. So, how do you determine the proper top line contribution goal? It's about the top line. It's about EBITDA too. It's about profitability. You can't sacrifice the bottom line, and typically you can't sacrifice the bottom line to grow the top line. You do have to recognize that in many of these opportunities we're talking about, there's a cost involved. So bottom line profit, EBITDA might go down for a year or two. As you invest in growing your business, might be better in the long term. And that's where a longer term financial projection will be extremely valuable for this kind of discussion. I think we are running out of time. And again, I certainly appreciate your attention. I think the expectation is if you've got just an idea or two from the 25 minutes you spent here, I think there's some value to it. But if some of this conversation sounds good, reach out to your consultants at the Florida SBDC. We certainly can help. Thank you so much for your attention. I appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of the program. Thank you.